Hi, this is a supplement to the CORP magazine article I wrote where I focused on the topic of the brain and how that relates to people's ability to innovate and people's ability to change. And it goes back to maybe a story my mom told me a long time ago. And my mom was a kindergarten teacher, and one of the things I noticed one time is that she kept food in her room, crackers. And I asked her one time, why you have crackers in your room? And she said, you know, Scott, when kids come to school, their brain doesn't work. They can't learn if they're hungry. Because if they're hungry, all they're worried about is where their next meal is coming from. And I took that into my life in corporate America, and I began to notice when people were afraid or worried, they had a hard time processing what they had to do differently when it came to change. So today what I'd like to do is, to add on, as an add-on to that article, I'd like to address a couple of topics. The first one being change and leaders. And this is some basic stuff. And I know everyone knows that, but just remember that as leaders, when you think about a new innovative strategy, or you get excited about a new initiative and you take that to your people, remember that you have a couple of advantages on them. First of all, you've had time to process things. Second of all, you're wired to see change as a challenge. Something exciting to be overcome. So when you see that, I mean, you're naturally going to be more excited, and not everyone necessarily sees that exactly like you do. And finally, you're in control. You might have people exactly like you underneath you, but you're telling them what to do, and you're directing them, and you're giving them a vision maybe, but you're in control, and maybe they're not. And sometimes that threatens people. So just keep that in mind as you go into some of these initiatives. The second thing is, I joke in the article about the no brain, not using your brain at all, and then I connect that to what Seth Godin calls the lizard brain. Remember, no brain is equal to the lizard brain. Yeah, technically your brain's still working, but I go into a lot of organizations, and I don't necessarily ask them, hey, is your brain working? And I oftentimes don't have an opportunity to spend days and days trying to understand where people are, but here's the types of things I listen for when people are under stress, and when people maybe aren't necessarily, their whole brain isn't engaged in something. I listen for people describing someone as, well, they were being irrational. Maybe I hear people saying, they're not acting normal. Or, the rest of their performance is great, but in this one area. Or oftentimes you'll hear people say, out of frustration, why can't they see? And then they'll go on and explain the things that they're not being able to see. My focus is performance. And in listening for those are keys that I hear that make me think, most people are able to handle most tasks for a certain amount of time. If they're unable to handle some basic tasks, what's different about them? Or maybe what's holding them back? And oftentimes, again, it's that lizard brain being in control. Finally, my basic message out of this whole article is, how do we take the lizard brain out of the equation? And back to my original story, where those crackers served up help those kindergartners get away from fight or flight mode and actually be able to learn. Adults, the food that they need are that they matter. The food that they need is that their input is important. The food that they need is their ideas are actually going to be followed up on, and they begin to look at the leader differently, so that when things come to them, they can hear it, they understand why, and then they can get excited about it. I started my business, and I call it the True Group, and really True hit me because of two things. I've done a lot of leadership development, and through all of that, and the many pages and volumes and volumes and hundreds of books that have been written about it, there are two things that leaders need to think about every day. And that is, what can I do to build trust with that individual across from me? And what can I do to leverage that trust to get their truth on the table? And of course, as leaders, we need to get our truth on the table, and then we can deal with it. And if I have one message kind of stemming from the article, and the article covers a lot of ground around the brain and the amygdala, and that's the lizard brain and all the other things, it is that this is really a basic issue about trust. And in the new normal, in Michigan and in many other states, we're bringing businesses back with 9 to 10% unemployment. And there's still a lot of fear and a lot of lag left over in our people. and that before we ask them to think differently, to innovate, we need to engage them and we need to take the lizard brain out of the equation so that they can bring all of their skills, all of their knowledge, and all of their energy to the opportunities that we see as leaders. Thanks.